Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6 from Downing Street, where Boris Johnson has promised to repay the trust of voters after leading the Conservatives to an extraordinary election victory. The party won an 80-seat Commons majority, its biggest since 1987. The Prime Minister said he hoped his victory would bring closure to the Brexit debate and let the healing begin. But it was a very different night for Labour, the party's worst performance since the 1930s. Jeremy Corbyn said he would not contest another general election as leader, but he hasn't stood down yet, despite calls for him to do so. The Liberal Democrats had a terrible night too. Their leader, Jo Swinson, lost her seat. In Scotland, the SNP made major gains, winning 48 of the 59 seats available. It was a night that saw the electoral map redrawn. With all seats declared, this is the state of the parties. The Conservatives have won 365 seats, Labour 203, the Scottish National Party 48, the Liberal Democrats 11, the DUP 8 and other parties 15. So let's have a look at the map showing the spread of parties at the last election in 2017. And this is how the map looks now, showing the Conservatives have gained 47 seats, Labour have lost 59, the SNP gained 13 and the Liberal Democrats lost 1. We'll be reporting from across the UK, hearing from the voters who helped change the political picture so dramatically and asking what the future holds now. Our political editor Laura Koonsberg reports on the Conservatives' dramatic victory. Her report contains flash photography.
The power of surprise, the power of victory.
Well, we did it! We did it! We pulled it off, didn't we?
The power of a Prime Minister with authority firmly in his hands.
With this mandate and this majority, we will at last be able to do what? We've been paying attention.
Jubilation here, they can keep the promise to leave the EU next month. The will we, won't we, fundamental tussle of Brexit almost at an end.
This election means that getting Brexit done is now the irrefutable, irresistible, unarguable decision of the British people.
But it didn't happen just because of traditional Tories, but because of Labour voters going over. The majority he craved, the start of the change.
In winning this election, we have won votes and the trust of people who have never voted Conservative before. Those people want change. We cannot, must not let them down. And in delivering change, we must change too. Let's get Brexit done, but first, my friends, let's get breakfast done too. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you all very much. Thank you all. Thank you.
Boris Johnson has pulled off what is genuinely a historic victory, not just because it's the biggest Conservative majority since the 1980s, but also because the first time that he's reminded his party, people who'd never before considered voting for Conservative have turned to them.
I'm a northerner, so I think you have to appeal to the whole country if it gives you the mandate, which I think is what's been given tonight.
Best day, best week, and then like a Christmas present.
And by 5 o'clock, everyone said yes, and we were like, OMG, is it going to happen? And it was amazing when it did.
He's won the right to call this home for 5 years now.
Are you going to resign, Mr. Corbyn?
We love you, Jeremy Corbyn.
For Jeremy Corbyn, it's the end of his ambition to move the few short miles to Westminster from his North London home.
Do you think you misread the mood?
Labour was swamped in this election. He's off by the spring, if not before.
I did everything I could. Of course, I take responsibility for putting the manifesto forward, but I have to say the manifesto was universally supported throughout our party and throughout our movement. And so, as I said in my own count result last night, we don't give up on the eternal hopes of a more decent society.
Our exit poll is suggesting that there will be a Conservative majority.
From the start, it was obvious what might be coming. One of the very first results. Blythe Valley in Northumberland, Labour since 1950 turned Tory. The new MP almost overwhelmed by the scale of that change.
And I would like to thank Boris.
And through the night, Labour's roots appeared to shrivel, whether in Yorkshire, the Midlands...
I'm just sorry that we've let people down.
...or the North East. Seat after seat flipped red to blue. Jeremy Corbyn's hopes came crashing down. And a fateful moment, just as he took to the stage in Islington. Sedgefield, the seat of Tony Blair, held by Labour for all time, broke for Boris Johnson too. The foundations of Labour victories past crumbling before our eyes. The party falling more heavily where people had voted leave.
You lost your seat, Miss Swinson.
The Lib Dems had a crushing night too. Just a few weeks ago, Jo Swinson claimed she could be Prime Minister.
523.
In the middle of the night, though, she even lost her own place in Parliament and closed the day neither an MP nor a party leader.
All of us who share an alternative vision for society have a responsibility to learn from this result and find new answers.
They lost at the hands of the Tories and the SNP too, who cleaned up. Look at the First Minister, unable to hide her glee as the results came through. Scotland yellow, England now largely blue. The Union uneasy, another a demand for a vote on independence on the way.
Now, I acknowledge that not absolutely everyone who voted SNP yesterday is ready to support independence. Whether or not Scotland becomes an independent country must be a matter for the people who live here.
The map moved in Northern Ireland too. The DUP leader at Westminster, Nigel Dodds, lost his seat. And for the first time, more nationalists than unionists were chosen by voters, pulling at the union's thread. The Brexit Party scooped up votes, but didn't cross the bar for any seats of their own.
I thought to create what happened last night to some extent. Now look, we are going to leave the European Union now at the end of January.
Politics is a tough business.
Nor did any of those who switched allegiances in the last few torrid years. All these falling pieces created one clear picture, one man securely in charge, even though his journey gave discomfort to many voters. But with this victory, Boris Johnson has secured at least a major chapter in the kind of history books he likes to write. He won't be a footnote now. His first task to finish what they started, but with an appeal to the 48 and the 52.
To those who did not vote for us or for me, and who wanted and perhaps still want to remain in the EU. And I want you to know that we in this one nation Conservative government will never ignore your good and positive feelings of warmth and sympathy towards the other nations of Europe.
Then an unlikely claim perhaps, a post-election promise of peace and goodwill.
This country deserves a break from wrangling, a break from politics and a permanent break from talking about Brexit. Thank you all very much and happy Christmas. Thank you.
Yet this politician has been unafraid to provoke, unafraid to gamble. Now swears he will govern for us all. With 5 years and a convincing majority, he has time to succeed or to stumble. For today, though, he who dared did win.
Well, Laura is with me now, and seeing some of those Labour strongholds go blue for the first time, many of them in decades, was staggering. What does it all mean for Boris Johnson and his government now?
Well, first off, and most straightforwardly, it means he's got a thumping majority. So when MPs get back to the House of Commons, he can enter the chamber as Prime Minister at the dispatch box, absolutely confident that behind him are not people looking for a way to shove him out. Behind him are people who are fully signed up to his programme, fully committed, and that means by the end of next month, in a matter of weeks, he will have been able to get the laws required to take us out of the European Union through Parliament, and that means that we are heading out of the European Union at the end of next month. That's the biggest thing of all to say about this. Second of all, though, in terms of what it means for our political landscape, it means at least
for the next few years, probably 5 years, we're looking at something very, very different. We're looking at a Tory party representing communities in places where they've never represented those voices of our viewers in different pockets of the country tonight. That's going to sound different, that's going to feel different, that's going to look different. The bigger question, though, is that a permanent shift? Has Boris Johnson really managed today to redraw the map forever? Of course, in truth, Sophie, as Labour has discovered to its cost today, the map's always moving. And parties never own their voters. It's voters who have the right to be represented and the right for parties to listen to them.
Laura, for now, thank you. Well, Labour has suffered its worst election defeat since 1935. Not only that, it lost seats in its traditional heartlands, Labour strongholds in the Midlands, Wales and the north of England that had never voted Conservative before. Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth reports from Stoke-on-Trent Central, which voted to leave the EU and has now gone blue for the first time in its history.
Stoke-on-Trent's industrial past is still printed on the skyline. With roots in coal, steel and, famously, ceramics, this was a Labour stronghold for decades. Not anymore. Stoke-on-Trent Central now has a Conservative MP, the first since the seat's creation in 1950. Jo Gideon, a businesswoman and until now a councillor in Kent, thinks she knows why she won here.
It's a city that feels it's been neglected and ignored for a long time, and so in a sense the fact that they voted 70% for Brexit and it didn't happen was just another example of how nobody was listening to them, and so it was a call to be listened to, really.
More people here voted to leave than any other city in the UK. The Tories tapped into Brexit frustration in Labour's heartlands. John is a former miner.
I've always voted Labour all my life, I've been till this time.
And who did you vote for?
Conservative.
Why is that?
To get something done on this Brexit business.
So you switched from Labour to Conservative?
Yes. I don't like Jeremy Corbyn, for one. He was trying to put the country back years.
Some in Labour claim their policy offer was crowded out by Brexit, which was the Tories' relentless focus.
The Conservatives deliberately put Brexit front and centre of their campaign, hoping it would transcend traditional party loyalties, and so targeting areas that voted to leave in the Midlands and the North. And that's where they gained support.
While Labour wrestles with the reasons behind this result, the former MP here called it a catastrophe, last night laying blame on the party's leaders.
In Stoke-on-Trent, we're going to have another 5 years of Tory government, probably with 3 Conservative MPs, and the damage and the untold horrors they will unleash in Stoke-on-Trent, I believe, lays firmly at the door of those running the National Party's campaign and the decisions that they have made about where to target and the sort of Brexit response they should have made.
In this city, some loyal to Labour are surprised at the extent of their losses.
I'll never be a Tory voter. I was born in 1985, my mum was a single mother, we were at the tail end of kind of the Thatcher decade and we were really struggling. And to see such a working class and hard working and friendly city like Stoke-on-Trent be turned, it's just so sad to see.
The country's political map does look very different today, with some who've never voted Tory now making that choice.
We've got to go with Boris, I'm afraid. So, yeah, times are changing.
They most certainly are. Alex Forsyth, BBC News, Stoke-on-Trent.
Well, despite all the losses, Jeremy Corbyn insisted that he was proud of his party's manifesto and defended his record as Labour leader. He said he would stand down after what he called a period of reflection, although some of his MPs have called on him to resign immediately. Our deputy political editor John Pienaar looks now at Labour's future. There are some flashing images in his report.
Here comes the leader, and there goes the leader. After last night, the media was keen to catch Jeremy Corbyn's thoughts in defeat. One cameraman who took a nasty tumble especially.
Are you going to say sorry? What about all the MPs who've lost their seats?
A lot keener anyway than he was to talk to them. It was a car crash, Labour's election, and this trip didn't go too well either. Now Mr Corbyn's not rushing the next leader's election.
What I hope is there will be a period when we can have a good discussion within the party, and I think that's healthy and that's to be very welcome. And I hope those that were inspired by our manifesto will actually join the party and take part in that discussion. It's up to them to set a programme for when an election will take place. It'll be in the early part of next year.
Jeremy Corbyn didn't put it like this, but he failed badly. And now he and his team are looking for someone they'd like to carry on what they've always described as the socialist struggle. There's no clear sign who that person might be, so they want time to plan and prepare for the succession. Labour's hurt won't heal quickly. Remainers and Leavers blaming each other or the leader for pleasing no one. Centrists raged at devoted Corbyn followers for turning off traditional supporters. The party's splitting ahead of a New Year leadership contest. Those who embraced politics the Corbyn way and blamed Brexit for defeat, and those who say Labour and its leader got it wrong.
I feel sorry for all those constituents up and down the country and all four corners of this country that need a Labour government and have been badly let down by the Labour Party, and we've delivered a hard-right Conservative government with the worst Conservative Prime Minister in history, and I think we should all reflect on that.
Unfortunately, our Labour heartlands, working class heartlands in the North and the Midlands that voted Leave, they undoubtedly felt that Labour had let them down.
So who could join the race to lead Labour? There's Rebecca Long-Bailey, but does she want the job? Angela Rayner's been mentioned, perhaps as deputy leader though. Keir Starmer's a heavyweight, a centre-ground pro-European, which could put some off. Emily Thornberry's a strong performer and looks ambitious. Then Lisa Nandy's young, left-leaning, looks like another contender. And Jess Phillips, outspoken, combative, maybe the wild card of the contest. Jeremy Corbyn's heading for a quieter life. To his admirers, an heroic loser. To critics, the man who consigned Labour to a fourth term out of office. They'll all be fighting over Labour's future before Jeremy Corbyn's even out of sight. John Pienaar, BBC News.